Recording started. Hello and most welcome to 1889 of the series. We will today continue with the VPLAI, as I call it, or the VPLA, Wittgenstein's private language argument, VPLA. And this is by Francis Y. Lin. Last time we discussed how there was a connection between the Morrison discovery of 1887 that also synchronistically coincided with the number of the lecture 1887. That in itself is what I would say quite extraordinary. The Morrison experiment show that there are no fixed private language coordinates in a classical world. The only fixed is the speed of light, about 300,000 kilometers per second. Apart from that, everything is loose and ready. And of course, when the discovery came in 1887, it was a complete uproar within the scientific community. No one had expected this to come about. Last time we would dwell into the criterion argument even deeper. We saw clearly that there can be no inner criterion to tell us what is the correct understanding. And not even a hidden psychological mechanism would do the trick. And one very important quote is, and I'll repeat it, one reason is that these two times the position of my eyes are highly unlikely to be completely the same. So are the lighting conditions. There are a million different values that needed to be fitted for it to be possible to have identity in this way. So sameness is not an empirical thing. It is not out there in the world. Neither is it decided by something that is completely inner, which more or less amounts to the very same thing. And this is a quite strong, harsh, I would say even harsh, blow to the common theory, the common assumed things that an interior regulates what a word means. Or the other side of the coin, the DCCT of the Domitian coin, as you might remember. The other side of the coin is that there linger some sort of physicality that utterly decide in the end a correct use, or what is different and what is same. You know, also briefly mentioned in our little group here with the ones who are behind these lectures, came out a discussion about Ian McGilchrist and what he said in a discussion together with Sir Roger Penrose. He still seemed to be in the belief that matter is the decider, or physicality could tell itself apart, so to speak, its nature itself that decided it's a Higgs boson or something similar. No interactivity. Interactivity is always the case. We mentioned the Klein bottle, where the inner reach out to the outer, and the outer at the same time reaches into the inner. Decidability is not an easy matter. One of the most complicated things in science. So you know what you're up to. And here, in this case, Wittgenstein clearly opposed what became later the views of McGinn, Hacker, and I would say to a certain extent also Joachim Schulte. There can be psychological mechanism hidden somewhere in the depths of our nature, but they will not decide, because it's not about decision. Whether something is read or not is all about grammatical use of the language, in the language, not something outside of it and not something inside of it. I will now continue to page 273. Where we left off in the, I think, glorious, if I may, lecture of 1887. Now, why is the statement certain unknown psychological mechanisms enable one to re-identify as sensations grammatical nonsense? To assume that there are such mechanisms, there must be ways of finding them out. If not, then the assumption would not make any sense, it would be as senseless as the statement, he has something. But I don't know whether it is money or debts or an empty till. Very good. Recall that the private diarist has no outward expressions of his sensations. So when he says that he is having an S sensation after the initial baptism, there are no observable signs to tell him, to help him tell that this is indeed true. He can only appeal to the unknown psychological mechanisms for help, thinking that they can enable him to identify the current sensation of S. So we have a vicious circle here. To find what the unknown mechanisms we must first make sure that the diarist is indeed having S sensations on some occasions after the initial baptism. But the latter task is to be done by the unknown mechanisms. Thus, there's no way to find the unknown psychological mechanisms in question. And the statement at the beginning of this paragraph is grammatically senseless. It might be thought that if inner mechanisms cannot help decide whether the private diarist is re-experiencing as sensations, then external devices can. Something external can help. What could that be? What is that externality? The thought is this. Suppose that there is a device comprising a meter and some electric poles which are connected to certain nerve ends in the diarist brain. Then when the diarist says that he is re-experiencing S sensations, the meter will give certain readings. So the readings on the meter will be able to tell whether the diarist is having an S sensation or not.
Meter.
Not.
The mysterious meter.
This, however, is only wishful thinking. In order for such a device to be constructed, it must be sure that the diarist does have some S sensations after the initial naming act. But this is precisely what the device is charged to do.
The diarist does have some sensations after the initial naming act, but this is precisely what the device is asked to do. La 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 la.
Without knowing for sure that some S sensations are indeed occurring. One could not occur. One could not even set out to construct the device. The same vicious circle is thus also present in this case. The upshot of the above discussion is that no inner mechanism nor external devices can help the diarist tell whether S2 is of the same type as S1. that is whether S2 is also S. There is a footnote, so I will go back to page 273. You may, Kalle. I will read footnote 65 here because it is of importance. In PI 265, Wittgenstein describes a similar case. When the diarist claims that he is having an S sensation, a manometer shows that his blood pressure goes up, up, up. As Wittgenstein points out, it will not make any difference if the diarist makes mistakes. Whether or not the diarist is indeed having an S sensation, as long as he claims that he is, the manometer will show the rise of his blood pressure.
Oy, oy,
the, the manometer will not be able to tell whether or not an S sensation is occurring. And now we continue on page 274. Sorry for the deviation, but I thought it important. Memory is not really an issue here. Even if the diarist had an infallible memory, so that at T2, he clearly and correctly remembered S1. There would still be no way for him to know whether or not S1 or S2 are of the same type. So there is no criterion of correctness in the diary case. No, not at all, and never can there be a sign of correctness. Never. I have just provided an explanation of why there's no criterion of correctness in the private diary case. It shows that the analogy between seeing red in the public case and feeling S in the private case does not work. In Remarks on the Philosophy of Psychology 1, Wittgenstein actually thinks about the same issue. There, Wittgenstein first points out that one can certainly raise his knee 3 times and say that he has the same sensation 3 times. And a case similar to that of seeing red twice in my explanation, then he asks why one cannot speak of having the same private sensation 3 times, and finally states explicitly that the analogy does not work and the private speaker really does not know, cannot know, which objects are the same in this case. Unfortunately, Wittgenstein there does not explain why the analogy fails to hold, echo, hold. I venture to think that if Wittgenstein were to give an explanation, it would be explanation. It would not be too different from the one I just presented.
Presented. Let's have a summary now. Presented.
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 So last word is presented for today. Presented.
Presented.
Presented. Page 274. 274. 274. Page 274 in PDF 18. 274. Just presented.
Let's see here in a second. Go back to some quotes here. I think the most interesting paragraph was the first one I read. It sort of sums it up. There are still some pages left in Francis Violin here, and in the concluding remark, it would clarify even more. But this is a mini version of the concluding remarks. Condensed, but they have the zest of it. And the first line here, now, why is the statement certain unknown psychological mechanisms enable one to re-identify as sensations grammatical nonsense. So this is the essence of the whole article. As I repeat it once more, it will become clearer later on. It's really, this is the first notion of sarcasm in Francis violin here, or it's on the verge of it. It's line 5 here. He has something, but I don't know whether it is money or debts or an empty till. It's a very good explanation of what a private sensation or referring to a private sensation is. It's a bit of nonsense, or I would say even something empty. And there are 3 reasons for that. The first one, we can never know the outsiders, the third person relation. The second one is neither can the first person, which we went into before. Since there are no criteria, his wallet lacks value. The third one is more or less it's wrong from the very start, and that could be the toughest one. Already from the start, it's a bit of nonsense. And let me rephrase that. The third one, and it's we never explain how we talk. So really from the outset, we've gone wrong somehow. We don't explain our own words. We use them. And of course, we know Wittgenstein, and it is in use that the criterion come to work. It's the inner coming to the outside and the outside coming to the inner. So the concluding remark here would be the last sentence on that paragraph. Thus, there is no way to find the unknown psychological mechanisms in questions. And the statement at the beginning of this paragraph is grammatically senseless. It lacks substance, criterion. It's absolutely empty. And in the next paragraph, we go to the other side. Could there be an external device, like my professor said a couple of weeks ago? There will come an external device that tells whether a listener to a lecture appreciated the lecture or not. And the answer to that is, it doesn't matter how advanced an instrument we make. It is not about the instrument. What we feel, think, say are grammatical features, not inner or completely outer. They are most definitely both. They are both inner and outer. if you go to the last sentence here on this paragraph, without knowing for sure that some S sensations are indeed occurring, one could not even set out to construct the device. So we don't know if there are any S sensations. How would we then be able to construct a device? It's a bit of nonsense to say, I construct the device to find out what I'm looking for, but I don't know what I'm looking for. It's, I, devices are not constructed that way. You need to know in quantum mechanics if your device is going to detect light, waves, or particle. That is upset from the beginning. We go to page 274. I have just provided an explanation of why there is no criterion of correctness in the private diary case. It shows that the analogy between seeing red in the public case and feeling S in the private case does not work. And later on, he also makes an analogy with the same construction that Lin used about seeing red 2 times, and Wittgenstein here does raise his knee 3 times, and that the sensation in each of these cases would be the same. So there is absolutely impossible without a criterion to know sameness. And by that also difference. Here, of course, we have a very close analogy between Derrida and Wittgenstein. Derrida points strongly to difference, which is neither sameness nor pure difference. It's an iteration with some fractal differences, but not with the original being or the original type being something of an Platonic ideal form or anything like that. Atoms are not ideal forms. They are always different. And as my dear colleague here pointed out in the previous lecture, when he brought in the monads, they simply do not have any windows for us to look into. We can tell. Akela, I think you need to come in now.
Yes. So let me only comment on this footnote 65 with the manometer. As Wittgenstein points out, it will not make any difference if the diarist makes mistakes, whether or not the diarist is indeed having an S sensation. As long as he claims that he is, the manometer will show the rise of his blood pressure. the manometer will not be able to tell whether or not an sensation is occurring. And this shows that your teacher, the rhetoric teacher, was mistaken. There is no device that can actually say something, cannot measure us, because because things can refer to different things. That is the point.
Yes,
and there is
it's a piece of nonsense to say, I will make a machine to investigate, but I don't know what. It simply doesn't make any sense. But for a layperson like me, it could make sense. But we need to look further into these things.
Yes, there was the philosopher Hume had a theory about the sun, that I think it's called correlation theory.
You disappear a bit there. Could you speak
No.
more clearly into the microphone?
Yes, David Hume had this theory about causation. The rooster, let me see.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Very good. Great comment.
So we might observe sunrise following the crowing of rooster for a long period of time, but it would still be irrational to believe the crowing causes the sunrise. In quantum physics, it actually could be the case, so it's not irrational. But
it's actually a bit like that in quantum mechanics, yeah.
But let's actually play with the rules here, like that is irrational. Let's pretend that. So let me say that we can compare the S. We can say it stands for sun, or for sunrise in this case. And Kalle, I'm the proud rooster. And I see the sun going up twice. So in 2 days in a row. But since I'm not communicating my thoughts to anybody, I cannot really know. I could try to write down in my rooster diary that the sun was actually the same this day as well as tomorrow. But this wouldn't really prove anything. Could this analogy work, Hans? I don't know.
It does work. It's not too bad. There is also another more gory detail about H.C. Andersen. He made an X in his diary, and we couldn't find any correlation about what was that X about. But it turns out it was connected to some sort of seedy business he was doing. So it's impossible with just the diary to know what it's referring to. You need all the global reality to understand.
Yes, indeed, we need the global reality. So it could be that, like, the rooster's heart goes up when he sees the sun.
Yeah.
You could measure the roosters with a nanometer, but it wouldn't really prove anything. So this is, I think this could, so to say, join Hume with Wittgenstein in one way.
In a way, yeah, if you take it in that way you've presented now. Yeah, I like that idea.
And roosters are so cute, so that's why I also like it. And let's end this with yes, please.
Didn't you think the sentence, he has something, but I don't know whether it's money or debts or an empty till?
Yes, absolutely.
I think
we could end this with a rooster imitation.
Yeah, why not?
I don't know even how they sound. Kukelikoo.
I'm not very good with roosters imitations.
Kukelikoo.
He has something, but I don't know whether it's money or debts or an empty till. That is a bit like constructing a machine that will discover something, but we don't know what. Okay, let's end with the rooster. 1, 2, 3. Cuckoo! See if I can stop the recording here. Thank you very much, Kalle Lundahl. Excellent comments as usual. Thank you everyone for joining in. I saw there was some questions here. Okay, I'll get back to them in the next lecture. And let's see where I end the recording. Stop recording there. Thank you very much for participating. Have an excellent morning, day, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. Bye-bye for now.